Good morning, everyone. Hope it's been a good morning for you. If it hasn't, I'm sure it will be after you learn how you can save some money with Cloud Solution Provider Program, or CSP in short. This is Petra Garland. I'm with Managed Solution in the marketing team, and we have two licensing experts with us today. Sean Ferrel is the chairman and founder of Managed Solution, and will be taking you through this webinar explaining everything you need to know about Microsoft licensing and how you can save some dollars. We also have Janelle Ma joining us. Janelle is Vice President of Cloud and Vendor Operations at Managed Solution. She is an in-house expert for licensing and knows the Microsoft system to its core. Janelle is the one that will find every penny available for your deployment, and today she will be answering your questions in the chat box. So feel free to ask any questions as they pop up. We will also dedicate some time in the end for Q&A. And there's no one better to kick off this webinar and present Managed Solutions' story than the founder himself. Sean, you can take it away from here.
All right, thanks, Petra. Welcome, everybody. We're at a baseball stadium. No, we're not really. It's a picture on our wall in our office because we do play IT kind of like the game of baseball. We kind of enjoy looking at everything like a sport. So we have players and fans, which are our customers and all that good stuff. So anyway, welcome to the webinar. Janelle is joining me today. We've been working together for 15 years now. So she's been instrumental in the growth of Managed Solutions. So I thought today we have a lot of partners, a lot of customers, and potential just people out there who want to learn more about, what's happening in the IT ecosystem, specifically about how procurement might work in terms of new product offerings. And for a lot of people on the line, we're going to talk a little bit about what's transitioning in traditional enterprise agreements, enterprise licensing agreements, enterprise agreements, specifically around Microsoft and some of their technologies. And again, we can take other things offline with, Amazon and some of the other partners we deal with. But really today, I wanted to help everyone digest a couple of things: how to best look at IT, and then ultimately how to procure essentially, SaaS and platforms and cloud-based infrastructure with technology. So with that, we're going to get going. I won't go much into this, but we are getting old, 15, 14 years in the business. And so we're in San Diego, California, for all that don't know, but we've grown a ton, and I'll leave it at that. We have a 24/7 help desk that we decided we want to build here in the US. So we do a lot of ongoing support for companies all over the world, kind of tiers 1 through 3, if you will, on a help desk. And we do a lot within healthcare, biotech, finance organizations, nonprofits. We do a lot right now in M&A because mergers and acquisitions seems to be a big topic for a lot of companies. So that's a real big specialty of ours. That being said, just keep moving on here. We are the Microsoft US Partner of the Year. And what we did is we got into a lot of their products that were really around how do we increase productivity in business, so teamwork. So what we got the Modern Workplace Award this last year. I'm a huge believer that if customers allow us to truly talk through the impact technology can have, the digital transformation, we can be super effective. And sometimes, everything's tool and product based, but really the answer to all of our problems in business is how do we make our users more productive so they can ultimately, serve their customers better and drive more revenue, for all our companies, and of course, secure it and all that good stuff. So we're going to talk about that today. We are in the top 1% of the cloud providers in the United States here, and we've been doing that for many years, and we've won a lot of different cool awards. So we're proud of that. So what we're going to talk about. So as an IT leader, or a person selling services, kind of like a managed solution, or a CIO, or even a CFO, how do we look at IT in the future? And we'll get to the licensing and how we buy that very quickly here. IT is pretty simple, and I'm going to do something that I want to call, I don't like this term, but dumb down a little bit today to kind of conceptualize what I think Microsoft's doing well and just the way we should be viewing IT. We're going to talk about what's called Microsoft 365, which is sort of a different spin on Office 365. We're going to talk about SQL with Azure and Azure in general. And then we're going to talk about enterprise mobility and security, which is Microsoft's, answer to security. And honestly, people are still kind of, what is it? How does it work? And it's a lot of tools within this product set called EMS. And then we're going to talk about the Microsoft strategy, and then we're going to talk turkey. I thought it was Thanksgiving time, so we'll talk about how to buy these products and what it looks like, and then how we can all work together. So traditionally, And this is true. I hope you guys agree with me. Like we operate in IT organizations and even in our own organization, we have experts in different divisions who deal with security, data center management, cloud, productivity. And what has happened in a lot of cases is that all these topics, for example, security, security has its own team, have become intertwined, and the silos are starting to be broken down inside of technology. And I'll give you a simple analogy. If Amazon or Microsoft or Google or IBM, whoever, all these cloud-based companies, what they're doing is they're essentially building inside of their big data centers the ability to deploy operating systems, policies for security, applications through the SaaS platforms that are out there, but really integrating everything together so we can better manage our user environment. So those silos that were once, the security team does their piece, the data center team does their piece, the cloud team builds out their tools. It's very much now integrated. So we have to keep that in mind. And I'm sure for a lot of you guys, you get it, you're doing it, but it is very different now from what it used to be in terms of IT departments. So the next problem is that these IT environments are super interconnected. All I mean by that, and not to complicate things, but IoT, the truck driving down the street or the forklift doing its thing, delivering some set of data to somewhere, a database, a place where we can dump all this data, and then ultimately take that data and produce analytics. I mean, from IoT, the Internet of the Thing out there, all the way through the data analytics that we want to produce, that's the new environment we work in IT. And ultimately, that's why we keep talking about this term that's kind of the big term for now, digital transformation, which is what I think will stick for a while, and we'll figure out what the next one is. But right now, IoT, AI, machine learning, putting stuff into a cloud, getting data out the front end, that's where the world's headed, and that's what we need to embrace. So Microsoft specifically has a plan, and I just say a really good plan. And what I mean by that is, and this is the simplest way that I would call it, dumbed down, if you will, the way to look at Microsoft. So Active Directory, as I put up here, it is like the source of truth, as one of my great engineers would tell me, or law, if you will, in the world of technology. It is where we put everything, our users, the policies in our organizations, the groups, sales groups, HR groups, and create governance so we make sure that things are managed. People ask me all the time, is things like AD going away? Do I still manage it on premise? And my simple answer is yes. You're going to have it, you're going to continue to manage it, and that is where we control and really allow everything else to flow from this source. So Active Directory is critical to the environment, and I hope everybody's familiar with that. Now, as we start talking, Microsoft came out with Azure several years ago, their cloud-based technology, and everybody's really confused about what that all means. And all I'm going to say to you today is that Azure is a big, almost like an e-commerce platform, if you will. It's a big place to distribute down platforms, like a database platform, software, a SaaS, and things like that to the user, whether they're on a Windows 10 desktop or they're on a Mac or they're on a Google Chromebook. I don't really care. It's a place where things can be delivered down, managed, governed, and really all that data that's moving through that sits in a database can be pushed or pulled in and out to create, whether it be analytics or business intelligence, whatever you want from it. It can help you with processing data, it can help you with storing data. That's what it is. So that's where you start to see this connector here called Azure AD Connect, which connects you into Microsoft Azure. And then part of that, once you're in Azure, is running sort of a secondary, if you choose, what's called Azure Active Directory instance, which is there in the middle. So I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible, but just so people who ask me all the time, do we get rid of Active Directory, can we keep it, all that stuff, nothing changes. I still believe you should have a lot of that based on premise and a lot of the rest of stuff running inside of the cloud. And then of course, as I talk to the second piece, we talk about all applications, whether you like it or not, and I'll give you the reason that I believe it's happening, will be delivered through some form of cloud. Whether you're a healthcare company who has an electronic medical record and you're going to have, buy directly from them, who probably are delivering you a SaaS-based offering or a platform as a service, meaning you're buying your EMR from them online. That's where things are going because these vendors, frankly, get you into these recurring contracts. So that's what you're going to see. And Microsoft Azure, just to give you an example, is delivering all of these even third-party applications, SAP, ServiceNow, Box, Dropbox, Google, through their cloud. okay, including their own apps like Office 365 and even our own that we build internally, those custom built apps. So keep it that simple and think about IT like that. It's like a big content delivery system or application delivery system, or I don't know, it's kind of an e-commerce platform, of course, to get what you need when you need it. And when I say that, get what you need when you need it, think about that in the future. Like when you're using an application, use it, and when you're not, frankly, turn it off. And then, of course, we talk about this idea of single sign-on or federation services, which that SSO or single sign-on conversation has been like the term for the last 5 or 6 years. All that means is that when Sean Ferrel or Janelle Mott or Petra or any of us log onto a computer, all the computer's looking to figure out is when we do that, a log on, it wants to know that we are authentic, that everything that one is we're connecting in correctly, we have the right information, the policy, security, all that stuff. And these federation tools or SSO tools, what are called Active Directory Federation Services or One Login or Okta or whatever they are, whatever one you decide to buy, that's what gives us federation or connectivity into other things. I always like to say to people, like when I connect with somebody else via LinkedIn and I'm able to suddenly send them a message, that means I'm essentially federated or trusted between those two, myself and that other person. So think about federation as just a way to get to your apps in a trusted way. And Microsoft has all the tools to do that, as I'm showing here on the screen. And there's a million more, by the way. So how can we and what can we do to buy into this strategy? Okay, so Microsoft has really, if you kind of keep it real high level and simple, 4 core areas that they focus. I put Azure in the middle today because what I wanted people to realize is that their data center, their servers, their virtual servers, and really what is Microsoft Azure is where Office 365 or Microsoft Dynamics or your Windows 10 operating system in the future, where all that content or application is coming from. So the things we're going to talk about today and really focus on is Microsoft's new product, Microsoft 365, and how it, along or paired with Office 365, kind of create a business in a box, if you will. And that's where they're going with things. Not because they want to sell you everything, which every vendor out there I'm sure does, but ultimately the tools themselves work really well together. And we're going to talk about that here now. So let's talk about the right pieces to the puzzle, okay? And what I mean by that is what Microsoft's done with Microsoft 365. And again, if any questions, this is a super important topic, come up around, I thought I had Office 365. You do, or you may. What is Microsoft 365? Great question. So if you have them, ask them. Microsoft built out Office 365, 5-6 years ago. It was originally this product called BPOS, then it became Office 365 just because they wanted a better name. And in that, when you started thinking about the tools, Office, email with Exchange, Skype, frankly, which was once a product called Link, other tools like OneDrive, what we had back then was really a set of productivity tools, the way to send messages, the way to do things like create a video or do online video or instant messaging or share files. I mean, all that stuff I hope is commonplace to most of us right now. But to me, all of those tools spell productivity for our users in the business. So most people have adopted Office 365 in some form or fashion. Maybe it's just email, maybe it's email with the new version of Office 2016 and what comes next is soon, but maybe it's Skype, maybe it's OneDrive, maybe it's Microsoft Teams, which if you haven't heard of Microsoft Teams or you've heard of a product like Slack, it is the future of where business collaboration will go. It's a phenomenal product integrated with voice. Skype now is moving into Teams, and it gives you a hub to do all of your transmittal, I guess you could say, of information inside of your business and with your customers. It's a phenomenal product, and it's part of Office 365. Anyway, back to it. So now all this information is traveling in and outside of our organization to customers, to vendors, to our own employees who work, in a mobile world. And the problem is that everybody starts to think about this security topic and how do we deal with it. So when Microsoft got, together, started thinking about how do we deal with the productivity tools that we've given the customer, the Windows operating system that sits on this, desktop I'm using here, and ultimately all that content that's moving around, whether it's in the cloud, I don't care if it's in your own data center or if it's in Azure or it's in, Amazon Web Services, how do we secure that data? And I do a thing called 3 Minute Thursday, and we talk about sort of the castle, the walls of the castle. From the outside, we have our network that solidifies what's happening on the inside. So your network and firewalls and, all that good stuff, SD-WAN. But on the inside, you have users and you have data that moves around and moves, frankly, to the outside as well. So when you think about security, Microsoft introduced a product called EMS, Enterprise Mobility and Security, about 4 or 5 years ago. And it includes tools that help with data, like a Word document moving in and out of the organization, maybe putting what's called a right around what can happen with that data. For example, no one can send my social security number out via an email, or things like intrusion that's coming from the outside. So everybody's heard about this WannaCry thing. I had a really good friend tell me they lost $4 million in an email that came from a CFO of another company doing an online transfer. It was nuts. But the point was, if they would have had some intrusion prevention from the outside saying this looks like a threat, or what we call advanced threat protection, or a way to what we call multi-factor authenticate, they would have been okay. So Microsoft, back to this, introduced Microsoft 365, which encompasses the Office 365 suite, Windows 10, okay, the operating system, so it's kind of all in one, and then EMS, all of their security tools, and sort of the business in a box, if you will, or I would say sometimes the kitchen sink. So what they've done there is allowed you to run parts of this with an Active Directory on premise, like I showed you in a previous slide, run your Office 365 environment, be able to deploy applications down to your Windows 10 desktop, and then secure those applications. That's the concept of really what Microsoft 365 is, and how to kind of have this enterprise approach to business, but have everything all in one package. And so it's a new product that's been out for, oh gosh, I don't know, about a year, that you guys can all go out there and consume. So when you see Office 365 versus M365, just know there's a difference. You're getting the operating system, you're getting the security platform, and it's just a really simple way to look at business, and it's easier to manage, frankly, whether it's for us to manage or it's for your internal IT team to manage. It's a pretty cool set of tools. And by the way, people yell at me all the time and say, well, I don't like this one product from Microsoft, and I won't go into what those names are. I'll say that 80-20 rule. If it does 80% of what you need, and frankly, for a lot of you guys who own enterprise agreements out there, or you own this technology on a pay-as-you-go basis, why go out and buy something else when it's already there? Just my 2 cents. So we'll leave it at that. So the next product we wanted to talk about was Microsoft Azure. And some of you guys on the phone may be Azure experts. Some of us, who are just trying to understand what the heck it is, I hope this does that for you. So I always tell people, the cloud is nothing different. It's like a new evolution of what we did for 25 years on premise. We originally had servers on premise that had to be networked. We had desktops, we had to back up data. We had to be able to take that data and, over time get business intelligence. We had to be able to figure out ways to go data center to data center to be able to get our disaster recovery solution set up. Virtual machines came out so I could take one server and have multiples on there. All that stuff I hope you guys all know everything about. And we had to have Active Directory telling this thing, hey, this person, this group, these people, they're authentic. They can do these things within my business and or outside of my business. So Microsoft Azure, in a simple way of looking at it, is anything from an infrastructure, the server that you need to house something on, virtual server, and it can be a Hyper-V server, which is their virtualization tool. It could be a third-party virtualization tool. It's a networking platform, meaning all of the networking capabilities, whether it's connecting into your private data center, here in San Diego, or in Thailand, it can do that for you. It's got the networking capabilities built in. It is a backup platform, okay? So when you put those servers, those applications, those virtual machines up there, those databases, it has multiple ways to back up stuff, whether it's I want something just kind of stored off in the cold archive, or I want something that's readily available when I need it. And maybe I'll do something on premise where I'll have infrastructure or servers built here on the on-premise, and I'll have the other thing, the high availability or the highly available server sitting in Azure. It can do that. It's great for DR. It does great stuff with business intelligence. We had a great example the other day about, people ask me all the time, why I want to go to the cloud, I don't know why. And I said, well, let's do something different. I said, where's all your data sources coming from, or databases, all this stuff? And they said, well, we have a sales CRM type application. We have all this stuff that does what we call asset tracking. We have our, it was a school. We have a teaching site with all these teachers who have availability in their schedules. They do scheduling. And I said, so, but what are you trying to do? And he said, well, it'd be nice to know what our sales pipeline looks like, what those teachers' availability is, where they're at in the world, and connect those all up. I said, okay, so why don't we dump all those databases into Azure and then spit business intelligence out the front end for you guys to figure out what it is we want to know. So that's some ways to think about the cloud. There's got to be a purpose for it. And then, of course, it's built for just pure play databases, SQL, things like that. And we'll talk about what's called the hybrid benefits of Azure here soon with SQL, because it's a big topic right now for all you EA buyers out there. How do I essentially have to deal with the SQL licensing, which is costly? How do I do it in a different fashion? So we'll talk about that. And then, of course, SaaS applications. I mean, Microsoft, think about a library of things when you go to the library in your own hometown and you go to check something in and check something out of the library. Think about SaaS or software as something just like that, where in the future, and now, frankly, if you do it right, you can build application libraries inside of the Microsoft platform to go in and out and get what you need and what you don't need, whether it's their applications or, like I said in a previous slide, SAP or Box or some other third-party application. That's what they're building, and so they're doing a great job of it. So that continuity conversation, I mean, it continues on with Microsoft. So the third piece, and this is a big slide, so just don't go too nuts trying to figure it all out, is just their security solution. You know, it's really identity-driven security. So Active Directory says, Sean's a good person, he's in part of managed solution, he's sending stuff in and out of the company, his kids log into his computer sometimes, so that's important that we understand our passwords are protected. And anyway, all this stuff that talks about security, people from the outside want to get into Sean's email, I'm sure, to kind of create an attack or send a malware. I mean, that's just part of life now. Or Sean does business in Europe, so there's GDPR requirements. Microsoft built these tools in the EMS platform to protect kind of your data and really your identity, you as the user. Okay, so things are securely done inside and outside of your organization. So the tools in that are anything from rights management, which is, they call it Azure, but just say rights management. Microsoft's Intune tool, which is essentially changing for a lot of people who are out there going, well, I didn't really like Intune. People are starting to think of MDM as, I kind of say that's kind of the past. And what's happening now is that people are looking at mobile device or device management as more of like enterprise mobility and management of any device. So even this desktop here that I'm using, this Windows 10 computer that I have from Dell, I actually have Intune connected into it, managing all of the things, the policies that are being deployed through my security department, the updates to the computer, things like that. So the point is that we have to start thinking about MDM in a different way, but this tool is included in this product. Azure Active Directory, we talked about that, sort of running a hybrid or a secondary Active Directory that's talking to our on-premise Active Directory. It's included in this to do some of that authentication stuff we talked about. Cloud app security. For anybody who doesn't know out there, and we had a great example from a huge healthcare firm the other day, who knows how many applications our users are downloading personally onto their devices. What they call that, as you guys probably know, is a lot of what we call shadow IT, things that are out there that we don't know exist. Microsoft Cloud App Security is a tool that goes out into the environment across these mobile devices using some of these tools and says, here's all these applications, from the ones most widely used down to the ones that frankly aren't being used much at all. And then we have to figure out how to govern those applications. Here's the right policies that we need to put into place. Here's the right, rights, so that, if we send something out of Dropbox, it gets stopped if it has a social security number. Cloud app security is an instrumental piece in building that strategy when it comes to security. Advanced threat analytics, which is the kind of the stuff, what's coming in from the outside. Is Sean logging in today from Florida, and at the same time is he in San Diego? We want to understand those threats that are coming in from the outside, and that's another tool that's included. So there's a ton in this product. It takes too long to go through in this webinar, but I want you to understand that EMS, which is included in the M365 SKU, is something that's really front and center for a lot of companies right now as they're looking at their security strategy. So what does this do? It all makes for a great user and IT friendly ecosystem. And the thing is, and it's our company, sort of our why in the company, is that all this technology is driven by our people. It's their tools, they're great, but you can't really build something great unless you have the right people. So it's important when you guys think about your strategy in IT or as partners of ours, to just know that the people are what create the strategy and implement these technologies, ultimately creating this digital transformation. That's all I was getting at there. So please know that. So Thanksgiving, talked about the turkey. Let's talk turkey and how to best consume these products. Poor turkeys. So anyway, the enterprise agreement, this is where we'll get down to the licensing piece. Microsoft for years, for traditional 250 seat companies or more, and that's why I have 500 up here or more, had sold you an enterprise agreement. About 2 years ago, which is a 3-year commitment, and I'll get into that in a second. About 2 years ago, they opened up a new product set called CSP, Cloud Solution Provider. The reason that they did that was because market share changed a little bit. A lot of providers came into market. Cisco, VMware, Salesforce, Amazon Web Services, and suddenly licensing agreements that you had, a lot of the licensing that you own wasn't being used. So what Microsoft figured was, well, we need more of the services-oriented companies out there to be out there with their customers talking about what these technologies can and can't do for the environment. And so they built this product or this program called CSP as an alternative to the enterprise agreement. And I'll go over the comparisons here shortly. So CSP was created, and the enterprise agreement, sort of the commitment or sort of the plan for Microsoft changed, where they said 500 seats or more, the enterprise agreement still makes sense, where the customer likes committing to a 3-year plan. They know kind of what their business is going to look like. They know how many employees they're going to have, things like that. They also get a benefit, of course, when it comes to discounting, which depends on the size of the customer. It's the easiest way to put it. But then again, there's times where companies, and we have a lot of them, frankly, who are very large companies who have M&A going on, or layoffs happening, or transitions, or seasonal type business. We have big CPA firms who say, I have 1,000 or 500 people now, but I'll be down to 250 in the next 6 months. So they didn't necessarily fit the EA agreement. But just so you guys know, for whoever's an EA expert on the phone, Microsoft kind of said if it's 500 seats or less, and I'll show you CSP in a second, let's look at that option for you. If it's 500 seats or more, you can still look at CSP, but it's something where EA still is something being pushed, by the Microsoft teams and a lot of the consumer world out there. So cloud solution provider, here's the big difference. It's a pay only for what you use type mentality. And what I mean by that is that if you buy Office 365, I don't really care what SKU, from an email account to that big M365 SKU, you can buy as little or as many as you want when you want them. Okay, so what I mean by that is, let's say I'm going to deploy Office 365 and I'm going to deploy it in phases over the next 6 months. Well, I don't want to buy it all up front if I'm only going to deploy 20% of my seats over the next, well, let's say 5 months, over the next 5 months. So maybe I'll buy as I go. This type of model, cloud solution provider, allows you to do that. Monthly billing, it becomes an operational expense. You get a bill at the end of the month with anything, frankly, that went on or off throughout the month, and or up or down. So let's say I bought, Office 365 E3, which is a kind of a common license for a lot of companies. And all of a sudden of the 500 I had, I turned 250 down to an E1 mid-month. I would only be accountable for 15 days of that month for the E3, and then the other 15 I'd be accountable for the lower level licensing. So it's a truly flexible model. And then, of course, there's a lot of access to enterprise level support through us, which they deem sort of their tier 1 service provider, meaning we have the help desk to take the calls, the people to do the consulting, and I'll talk about the cash incentives. Microsoft does put out a lot of money for pilots around Microsoft Azure or Teams or Skype or any other big products that are, sort of new in market and or emerging in market. And then the big thing that this thing allows us to do, if you will allow us to help, is kind of meter what's happening within your users, see who's using what, and make sure that, if we need to turn down something, we should. We should save money where we can. Like I told this great gal the other day that I'm friends with in a healthcare organization, I truly believe Nirvana will be the day where we're managing everything through the cloud, all these SaaS, pay-as-you-go applications, and really we're doing a really good job of turning them on and turning them off. So that's kind of where that will end up. But that's CSP. And it looks like, real quick, we have a question here. It looks like we're answering them. Okay, good. Okay, so let's keep going. There we go. So keeping my options open. No more 3-year commitments. Choose the monthly. You can choose annual billing if you want to be billed under CSP for annually. You want to pay ahead, you can. But again, if you want to mix and match licenses, 77 users of Office 365 E3 or 32 users of just Skype, or 10 users of a kiosk worker who just has an email account in your organization, you can do that, and you can change it monthly when you need. And frankly, if you don't want any of that agreement and you want to switch back to EA, you can do that as well. It's a super simple way to buy licensing, and of course, it's discounted as well. So let's talk about, side by side, in a really simple dashboard. By the way, there's a million of them out there. I figured these were some of the most important things, what EA versus CSP looks like. So EA is traditionally a 3-year commitment. At the end of the year, if you added more licenses, you true up, you pay more for what you added. You can't really quote unquote true down and say, hey, I went from 500 down to 150, I want my money back. It doesn't really work that way. Under CSP, like I mentioned, it's monthly and even daily if you really are watching what's happening with your users. Support, if you pay Microsoft, you get support in a great model that they have, whether it's through some of their help desk people or some of their like Microsoft consulting services. It's really up to you how you do it. You can get, can be less expensive or more expensive depending on what you need. From CSP, the idea is you get to your partner like a managed solution who has access to those Microsoft people to be that tier 1 support model for you. So we do that. We do the help desk stuff, we do the consulting work. A lot of the times when a customer comes and said, I'm interested in doing this, if you're big enough and Microsoft will fund a pilot, not always, if they will, we can get the money like anybody else. We look at for billing portals. I mean, the ultimate for the customer is Microsoft has their own online portal. Oftentimes when you have an EA, you as the customer don't check it all as much as you should. And then, when you look at CSP stuff, I think you should be checking it. So we want to make sure you have a portal for your customer to be able to go in and see what they have. Incentives. Yes, if you're an EA holder, and I hear this all the time from our partners who we just do services for who have an EA, of course, Microsoft comes in and says we can provide incentives to a partner like Managed Solution to help you deploy something. We can do the same thing under CSP. It all ends up in the same place, and good for Microsoft, where we take something that people are interested in like Azure, and as long as Microsoft believes there's going to be a big enough Azure spend at the end of the year, they'll provide us some money to help you guys figure out if it's a good fit or not. Discounts for licenses. EA, as I mentioned before, it depends on how big you are seat-wise and how you're buying licensing. CSP, the same thing, depending on how big you are, what type of licensing, what time of year, all that good stuff. I hate to say, we get discounts that we provide to our partners, to our customers, and ultimately just try to get you guys the best discount we can on licensing. Here's my thing. I never set out to be a product company. I really didn't. I do it because I ultimately know that the services in one way or another will come along with it. I just want to make sure that our customers can take advantage of the best way to buy products going forward in a more SaaS-based world. So anyway, upgrade downgrade rights, not really an EA, as I said. You can true up, as you guys add more, but you can't really true down. It's a challenging thing, and some people, may or may not need to true up or true down, but ultimately it's just kind of you buy what you buy. CSP, do what you want, you guys. I see customers go up and down all the time, and Miss Janelle on the phone, she works her tail off getting calls and talking to people to make sure they have what they need. And then licensing rights, really in an EA, you're kind of said, I'm going to buy 500 seats of Office 2016 or 500 seats of Office 365 E3. In CSP, what we want to know as we go through deployments with you is, does that group in your organization need kiosk workers, or are they okay with having a full-blown, even Skype for Skype voice or hosted Skype or whatever you want to call it in the cloud? So we need the big E5 SKU or Microsoft 365 E5 SKU. It can be mixed and matched as much as you need to. So that being said, Microsoft Azure, this is a big one, and people are, I think, not confused. It is challenging, one, to figure out what I want to do in Azure, frankly. So don't feel bad if you're going, I don't know where to go with this, and or two is how to buy it. Traditionally, Microsoft Azure, if you were going to buy it in an EA, was sort of sold in a pre-purchase motion, like, hey, commit to spending $2,500 minimum per year on your EA, or sometimes in the past it was more money, and start to leverage Azure. A lot of companies weren't necessarily doing it. In CSP, Microsoft came out and said the go forward motion is that Azure, with its partners who are CSP providers like Managed Solution, will be where people buy Microsoft Azure. And so any SKU from Microsoft Azure, whether it's what we call a pay-as-you-go instance or sort of a reserved instance, by the way, and I put that on here, everybody understands reserved is pay-as-you-go, and I'll keep that simple. We can buy things hourly when we start off with customers and figure out kind of what that usage looks like in their Azure cloud. It's kind of like a heartbeat, right? We want to see how things are going. But once we kind of figure out the de facto standard that this server is doing X, and we look at over a 6-month term, what it would cost, or a 12-month term to buy a reserved instance, like pay up front and get a discount, we may want to do that. And that's stuff that we go through with our customers. And then Microsoft, is funding available? Yeah, there's a lot of funding through different programs that they come out with that we try to produce for our customers to help them get to Azure. It's not perfect, meaning, let's keep it simple. Microsoft has to see that there's going to be ROI. If you guys are going to purchase Azure for the long term and go into this, they'll throw us some cash to do some proof of concepts. If they're concerned or you've already done it and you're already in Azure and they feel like you're over that hump, then we don't necessarily get access to it. But we have, as a provider, the same access as to any of your partners, even if you're buying EA today across the globe. So ask us about it. We'll be honest and tell you yes or no, we can get it or we can't. Janelle, again, works her tail off to make sure with our sales team that she's out there hunting for it. And, it's worth trying for if we can. So let's talk about this, the Azure hybrid benefit with SQL, okay? So a lot of companies who have traditionally bought the enterprise agreement or have had to deal with SQL servers or licensing, everybody's familiar with, do I license SQL, by the core processor, all that stuff. What's happening now is that people are starting to realize that as I move my database to the cloud, Amazon Web Services, IBM, Salesforce, Cisco, VMware, Microsoft Azure, sometimes I'm actually having to pay, if I go to Amazon Web Services and pay for a SQL database in their platform, I'm also licensed for a Microsoft SQL server in my EA. I'm kind of double paying. So what Microsoft has done is said, and I'll keep this simple for today, is said, if you're to buy the SQL Azure component of Microsoft Azure or Microsoft SQL Azure, then what we'll do is allow you to relicense it if you have on-premise compute on your servers on-premise. So again, it's a cool benefit. I think they say if you do it right, there's about a 41% cost savings by kind of doing this Azure hybrid benefit with SQL. It's a really cool thing to do. And again, as we're looking at how we buy and position databases and figure out how to get databases into Azure, we should, potentially leverage funding to do that and see what we can do. So this is confusing, right? And I wanted to talk about how we can help, and I think that's fair that we can do that. And I don't know this guy, by the way. I was doing this PowerPoint with some people, and my kids said, "Oh, I like him," so we put him on there. So the first thing we can do is sort of help you guys with an assessment, EA versus CSP. Just let's look at your licensing and figure out if it works or it doesn't, in one or the other. Or can you guys? This question comes up all the time. I bought my EA. I'm kind of good with my 1,000 seats, but I know that things are going to come in and out for the next year. Okay, buy the rest in CSP. Yes, you can do that. CSP quoting with discounts. We do get discounts under CSP. So we get the highest level discount as any other tier 1 provider in the world, and we go out there and working with our partners and or our customers, try to give them everything we can to make sure that they're getting the best discount through managed solution, period. That's the best we can do. And at times we know in a world of product sales that somebody down the street is going to try to beat out that price, and there's going to be a lot of mixing and matching of licensing or product moving between provider. Just remember, my goal was never to be a product company. It just happens to be that we're trying to do this as a convenience to our customers so we can be there to provide ongoing support in one way or another for them. So please understand that. Azure Assistance, optimizing pricing. There's a lot of people who have made that leap of faith all the way into Azure and other clouds. And frankly, it's worth it to look at and right size and figure out what you should or should not do. And sometimes because people like the pay-as-you-go model, because remember, Azure is a utility, you should be paying for what you use. They like having it under CSP. Client portals, Janelle can help with that, with customer changes as they want to make changes to their agreement. Looking into your own BI, your business intelligence, to tell you, hey, that you've got 500 seats of Microsoft 365, but you really only need 250 of these users using it, and the other 250 can be on a E1 SKU, which is an email kind of web apps only SKU. Consulting services for managed solution. A year ago, we get all these great requests from customers to help them, with projects. And the question, like with anything in life, is before we do a project, it's always important to kind of agree that, hey, these are the things that need to get done to make this right. So people come to us and say, I want Office 365, and I'll say, well, just make sure we secure it and all that good stuff. So I think having like that hourly capability, which we implemented about 6 months ago, to come out and spend like hourly engagements with you guys to just go through the process is super important. So consulting services, managed and help desk services, all that stuff that we do. And for the partners, we have a lot of them, and it's not always perfect partners, in that, when we're taking a discount we get from a provider like Microsoft and reselling something to your customer, we're doing what we can as far as getting the best discounts we can, and that's just kind of how it works. But evergreen commissions, once you partner with us and we get a client onto that CSP platform or managed service platform, or they're using our help desk, you get commissions forever as long as the client's with us. No administrative fees. We don't charge you to be a partner. Direct to customer billing. We take care of that for you guys, because believe me, it's a nightmare. We do provide you dedicated account executives. I mean, hey, we thank you, partners who are doing this stuff for us. Frankly, you guys are like a great arm of our sales team. And the thing we need to do a better job of is continuing to equip you guys with, marketing support, collateral, trainings, things like that, so you guys can be the experts on selling this stuff and just leverage us as that arm of your, selling your product and or your Microsoft consulting services. So Danielle and our marketing and and our partner channel partner manager, so a lot of them, she has been instrumental in helping build that with you guys. So anyway, partners out there, happy to help in any way we can and always provide feedback along the way. So with that, I think people wanted to know a little bit more about Microsoft programs. So a couple things that I think are hugely impactful, and again, we're part of all these programs within Microsoft. One is, let's start with the top, cloud solution provider. We talked about it. We are a CSP. We're the top in the United States in terms of the tiers. We get the biggest discounts, and again, the discounts can be handed down to win a customer, and it kind of depends on the size of the customer, things like that. We are a fast track ready partner, which means that monies are available to sort of fast track the customer to the cloud. Again, I get asked all the time, can you get money for that client? It depends on the size of the customer. And sometimes, if you're 5, 10, 20, 25 users, no, we're just not going to be able to get money. Microsoft doesn't see the need to put money into that, ecosystem right now. We are the largest, what's called tech for social impact provider. So Janelle and Danielle and our team work with a ton of nonprofits across the US, and it's a big push for me is to make sure we're impacting them, because nonprofits, pay less for licensing, if you guys don't already know that. They ultimately, get a lot in terms of deployment dollars, and really we are able to feel, I mean, it's a big deal for us as a company to help these nonprofits across the US. So the Goodwills and the Jewish Family Services and the Catholic Churches and all those companies we get to deal with, super fun and super important to us. We do, and I'll skip the education cloud solution provider, but we sell to education. So if you're an EDU provider, we deal with a lot of the school systems, higher ed, K through 12, and we get to provide them with some of the A SKUs, if you will, if you're on the phone and education licensing. CIE, customer immersion experience. It's the most impactful thing we do for customers. So we facilitate in a room, one customer, and sometimes more, with all their executives, a day in the life of using Microsoft products. The customer has to be big enough to have, a group of executives or IT team, so we can bring in devices and sit with them, and we have over 10 facilitators on staff who ultimately facilitate, what it would be like to use products like Teams or Skype or all these things, frankly, innovated or integrated, and have some of those security stuff that we talked about earlier built around that. So when you're having fun on that computer and you go out to send, my bank statement to somebody else, it goes, oops, can't quite do that. There's no money in the account anyway. So that being said, we do stuff for government solution provider. Microsoft has its own private government cloud. The states, local governments, all the SLG as they call it accounts, they can come to us and we can help them. And then we do Azure data center optimization, really looking at Azure, your spend, and figuring out, how to best take advantage of Microsoft Azure. It's the simplest way I could put it. So with that said, we have plenty of time. I'm surprised we got through that so quick, but I talk fast. So it looks like questions are being answered as we go. But if you guys do have any questions about this licensing, ultimately comparing an EA to maybe a CSP or doing some sort of blend of the two, having us help with proof of concept, services, things like that, we'll hook you up with the right people. And ultimately, my goal in these webinars and our, we call 3-minute Thursdays, 3 minutes is a short amount of time, is to just get as much information out to you guys in the community. And, just make sure you guys are educated on what's available. Technology is super impactful right now. I always tell people I want to be like the guy painting the picture, if you will, for the future with this digital transformation coming. If you sit with us as a customer and allow us to just help you, well, first help us understand your business. Believe me, it's super fun when we get to understand exactly how you guys do what you do and drive revenue and make your users happy and build your great cultures. We can help you bring in that technology and drive the digital transformation. I mean, we have the people to do that. So if there's no other questions, I think we're good. Thanks for everyone who attended today, and we will probably pick up here in a couple of weeks with another webinar. And if you have any suggestions for one, send them to Petra, and we'll take care of you guys. Thanks, everyone.